Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Baptiste Orthodontics Stadium, where we are getting ready for Week 7 of Wekiva football action. This week, the Mustangs host the Dr. Phillips Panthers after coming off of their first and only loss of the season. Mark Barchi, the voice of the Mustangs, here with Neil Fisher from the Apopka Chief, and we are getting ready to take you through tonight's game. Neil, the season going so well for Wekiva right up until the second quarter of last week, and then through a series of stumbles, some special teams issues, Chad Davis being absent from the running game made the rushing game very ineffective for Wekiva last week. That combined with some mental lapses and a lot of other mistakes, and just the fact that Edgewater is that good, finally delivered a dose of humility to the Mustangs, who otherwise are still having a strong season. They are still ranked in the Sentinel Super 16. They're still ranked in Florida high school football. I believe they are just outside of the top 10 in the AP poll for 7A, so they still are in a relatively strong position when you look at the whole state, but they do suffer from the fact that Edgewater is in their district, and unless something really remarkable happens and Edgewater loses both of their remaining district games, which seems improbable, the Mustangs are probably looking at a wild card shot at the playoffs. The best they would be able to finish is in 5th, taking one of those at-large spots from the region.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. A couple of notes there in your introduction. First of all, of course, the best that Wekiva could probably do now is 5th. We've mentioned this throughout the season. The way the format works now is if you win the district championship, there are 4 districts in each of the 4 regions across the state. You are guaranteed at least a 4th seed. So you might have teams with more RPI points, that's the ratings percentage index, that's what decides the seedings. One team might have more points than the district champion, but the district champion gets the higher seed. So going on with the rest of the season, there's 4 more games left. Wekiva has to really focus on not making another stumble, as you mentioned. This, of course, is a game that would really solidify with a victory. And it's really the same for DP. Both teams are in the same situation. DP comes in with a 5-2 record. Both teams are in the situation where this will give them tremendous points and really help solidify them, move them into a better position to gain no worse than one of those wild card seeds. Going back to the actual game itself against Edgewater, Wekiva came out, took a 14-0 and 21-7 lead. I can't stress it enough. I stressed it in my article about the game. I stressed it in the article in the preview. Mistakes, mistakes, mistakes. 90% of all games, as the saying goes, are lost, not won. Wekiva took those 14-point leads because Edgewater was making the mistakes. 2 turnovers on Edgewater's first 2 possessions. Wekiva turned it into a 14-0 lead. And then, of course, it changed. Edgewater scored 31 straight points. Wekiva made the mistakes. 2 turnovers, gave up 3 sacks, and was outgained 278 to 103 yards.
All right, Neil, well, we're going to go down to the field now and get ready to get things started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Wekiva High School welcomes you to Baptiste Orthodontics Stadium for varsity football competition. Please welcome our guests from Dr. Phillips High School. They are the Panthers. And they'll be taking on your Wekiva High School Mustangs. Before we begin our game this evening, we ask that you please stand and remove your hats as we honor America with the presentation of colors by the Wekiva High School Air Force Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps. Leading the detail is Cadet Major David Hernandez carrying the U.S. flag. Carrying the state flag is Cadet First Lieutenant Michelle Thomas. Carrying the Air Force flag is Cadet Technical Sergeant Jacob Michael. Carrying the POW flag is Cadet Staff Sergeant Dominic Chandler. The Rifle Guards are Cadet Second Lieutenant Daniel Gutierrez and Cadet Second Lieutenant Daryl Gutierrez. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the playing of our national anthem, performed tonight by your Wekiva High School Marching Band. As our team captains take midfield for the coin toss, we'll take this opportunity to recognize our officials for tonight's game. From the Central Florida Officials Association here in Orlando, the referee, Mr. Rodney Clevenger. The umpire, Dr. Jerome Thompson. The line judge is Chuck Bowman. The lineman is Jason Vinson. Back judge, Zoe Cooper. And clock operator, Dale Kneep. We thank them for their dedicated service to our high school athletic programs and join them along with our participating schools, reminding everyone to make great sportsmanship a part of this and every athletic competition.
For Wekiva, 147 and 79. For Dr. Phillips, 12, 29, 77.
All right, Neil. Well, the Mustangs now are going to have to see if they can bounce back and rebound, hopefully learning some lessons from last week. Certainly their diminished rushing game required Brendan Sear to step up and participate in a wider variety of plays. Larry Preston was utilized all over the field, which was not a big surprise. So last week's game certainly may have had some value to the Mustangs in spite of the loss.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. And, of course, we weren't – it was a very, quick ending to our pregame show there because, of course, the national anthem was about to be played. And, by the way, great job, as always, by the Mustang Marching Band, the Mustang Band. But, really, it came down to mistakes. And where I was going to go with that was simply that, yes, Wekiva was 5-0 going into the game last week, but Coach Bettesum, and of course, I don't talk directly to him for my articles or we don't interview the other coaches, but they also talked the same too when we were having our conversations. He kept talking about how the mistakes were killing the team and they had to get better. Of course, when the season starts, you expect the team not to be at its best. You expect them to get better with each season, with each game and each week. I do believe Wekiva's quality of play has improved, but they are still making those handful of mistakes, which when you get a team like Edgewater can really take advantage of them and turn them very quickly. The hammer blow, kick to the gut type feeling into points right away, and that's what happened last week. The reason I bring this up is because, of course, Wekiva is looking to rebound, getting back.
Please welcome to the field our guests for tonight's game. From Dr. Phillips High School, they are the Panthers.
Wekiva, of course, is looking to rebound, get back into that. Nonetheless, Dr. Phillips is the same type of team. They can very quickly put points on the board. They can very quickly turn a deficit, even a multiple touchdown deficit, into a quick lead. So Wekiva has to be very quick, and hopefully that was the lesson learned last week. Again, after they took the 21-7 lead, they turned the ball over twice, had 3 sacks, and they were outgained 278 to 103 yards. In situations like that, it's not just the turnovers and sacks, so a number of plays, misalignments before the ball was snapped, and also a number of just plays where the blocking, the wrong defender was being blocked.
So now an opportunity here. Dr. Phillips is, so far this season, a little bit weaker than in the past seasons we've seen them. They currently come into this game with 2 losses on the season.
5-2, yes.
Yep, 5-2, and 4-2, because we're going into week 7.
Actually, 5-2, they have not had a bye week yet.
Neither has Wekiva. And so the Mustangs are statistically favored to win tonight, but this should still be a competitive contest that we are expecting.
Yeah, Dr. Phillips is a team here. Just looking at the record, first of all, specifically this season, they defeated Timber Creek, West Orange, and Boone. Those are the 3 teams, of course, that are at the very least always considered playoff contenders.
Riley Stevens is set for the kick.
But they have also lost to Apopka and Seminole, 2 teams that are expected to make very deep runs into the postseason. So, of course, where I'm going with this is Dr. Phillips has beaten the teams that they're supposed to with those 4 victories. However, they have yet to beat a team that they're not supposed to. Apopka and Seminole are kind of at the top level, the teams that you need to beat if you're going to be taken seriously as making a deep run and even contending for the state championship.
Javon Coleman has the return for the Mustangs. He's stopped by Malachi Merced. Of the Dr. Phillips kicking team, the Mustangs will take over their first possession of the game from their own 28-yard line. Snap to Sear. Amari Thomas is going to take it up the middle.
Stop by 9.
So as you mentioned, Davis was out last week, and we'll see if he comes in. To be honest, we do our best to try to keep up with the injury report, but it's not always easy. Coaches don't always aren't the most direct when revealing who's injured and who's not.
A gain of 4 on the opening run by Amari Thomas. Stop made by Stephen Dix. Handoff to Thomas again, and he falls to the ground. Amari Thomas loses the ball, but recovers his own fumble.
So Wekiva catches a break there. That could have been disaster. DP getting the first big blow, but also on Wekiva's side of the field.
A loss of 2 on the play. It brings up 3rd and 8 for the Mustangs. Yeah, that could have been much worse. Snap to Sear. He goes for the pass, and it's complete.
86, stop by 5.
The pass is complete to number 86, Harleonte Reed, taken down by Shai Gaskin after the completion. That puts the ball at the 36-yard line and brings up 3rd and 2.
And Wekiva is going to go for it here. Actually, I think they were trying to pull DP off sides.
Flag on the play prior to the snap. Offsides called against the Panther defense. That's a 5-yard donation to the Mustang cause, and it results in a Wekiva first down.
So Wekiva making the first big mistake of the game there with that fumble, somewhat dodging a bullet, but DP returns the favor.
Yeah, and so what would have been a tough 3rd and 2 play instead turns into 1st and 10. The Mustangs try that frequently. It only sometimes works. Sear with the handoff to Thomas. Goes around the left-hand side for a short gain.
So again, Mark, we started off this game talking about the legacy of DP. DP has, of course, they won the 2017 state championship.
Amari Thomas on the carry for a 3-yard gain before being tackled by Malachi Merced. 2nd and 7 coming up for the Mustangs.
Of course,
flicks it over.
24 on the stop.
Jamon Coleman on the lateral. Stop made by Cameron Metcalf.
it's Coleman's number, 9. Huh? 29? Is that 5?
That's good for a gain of 2 yards, and it brings up 3rd and 5, a long 5 for the Mustangs. Open man with Harleonte Reed. He's got some room in front of him, and he's finally taken down all the way down at the 20-yard line. Pass complete to Harleonte Reed for a big gain and a Mustang first down. Alberto Guzman saves the touchdown for the Panthers.
Yeah, Reed completely open there on the left hash mark. Looked like DP had confusion in the defensive backfield. A simple hook route there by Reed.
Gain of 33 on the play for Reed.
And we're going to talk more about this, but these teams are very much the same. They look to make those big plays there, kind of getting that quick hammer blow to the gut play.
Who's up?
34 carry, 9 on the stop.
Amari Thomas once again carries for the Mustangs, this time for a gain of 5 yards. Brings up 2nd and 5 for the Mustangs inside the red zone.
And that 33
fakes the handoff to Thomas, and he had a good look at Harleonte Reed there.
Is that Thomas again?
Yep.
So that 33-yard gain really opened up that rushing play, which followed in the 5 yards on first down. A very strong first down play. How many yards did he gain on that last play?
5.
It was an incomplete pass.
Snap to Sear, looking toward the end zone, and he overthrows his receiver. The pass intended for Aquila Sumter falls incomplete, and that'll bring up 3rd and 5 for the Mustangs.
So again, another wide open receiver there. It looks like DP. Wekiva's only thrown a couple of passes here. Both times, though, the receivers have been wide open.
And it looks like Brian Wilson is going to come on for a field goal attempt here.
So I'd like to say this is as sure as a possible field goal, but of course we saw with the Rams and Seahawks last night on the last play, that's not always the case.
It's up. It looks good from here, and it is not. It is wide left. The field goal is wide left and is no good, and so that turns the ball over on downs to the Panthers. They'll take over from from their own 16-yard line.
And that's an ouch there, Mark. Big time. You move the ball about 70 yards, get a couple of third down conversions, a couple of really nice passing plays. Had an opportunity to set the tone, even though it might only be a field goal. It's still a lot easier to play from ahead than behind, especially when you do it on your first possession. Golden opportunity for Wekiva to establish some momentum and kind of exert their force, gone by the wayside there.
So now the Panthers will have their first offensive opportunity of the game. Oh, and we lost a helmet here.
7 on the stop. 6 on the carry.
Brandon Fields on the carry for the Panthers, taken down by Johnny Chaney of the Mustang defense. That's a loss of 3 on the play, and it'll bring up 2nd and 13 for the Panthers.
So as we mentioned at the beginning, look for the name Brandon Fields. A lot tonight, along with Nevin Givens. They pretty much are the 1-2 punch for Dr. Phillips.
Handoff is faked, going long, and it's out of bounds. The pass intended for Jaquez Jones is out of bounds to the left and falls incomplete. That brings up 3rd and 13 for the Panthers.
Nevin Howlands and Brandon Fields are the 2 running backs. Isaiah Givens is the quarterback. The 2 running backs are averaging over 150 yards combined per game.
Panthers try to draw the Mustangs off sides. They don't fall for it. Hand off to Fields. He's got some room, got a good block. And he's going to get a big gain before finally being shoved out of bounds.
Yeah, all the way into Mustang territory. The first strike offensively for Dr. Phillips, and I can see just right in front of us here, Coach Beddisome letting his defense know not only the displeasure, but someone clearly missed the block there. Fields came through that the interior right behind the center and cut back to the left.
A gain of 44 yards on the run by Brandon Fields. Azion Scott finally pushing him out of bounds for the Mustangs. Panthers now into Mustang territory.
Is that the 43?
And ladies and gentlemen, the Panthers will take their first timeout of the first half. 6 minutes, 20 seconds remaining.
Is that the 43?
Yeah, we don't have timeout left digit on the scoreboard. It only goes to here. Oh, okay. All right.
So real quick here, didn't get a chance to say this before. It's really been a fast-paced game, but Dr. Phillips not only won the 2017 state championship, they've also, over the course of the last 20 years, advanced to the state semifinals 8 times and made it to the final 5 times. And of course, they've won the district championship, I believe it's 15 straight years now. So.
6.
Fields again takes off and gets another first down before he's taken down by the Mustangs. Johnny Cheney stops Brandon Fields, but not before the Panthers pick up a first down.
A very similar play. They're pretty much the same call as the 44-yard gain.
A gain of 11 on that play, and we've reached near the midpoint of the first quarter, and so we'll pause for an official timeout. Yeah. No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay. No, I'm at the mic, sorry. We already made mistakes. I think we figured it out.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank our friends at Baptiste Orthodontics, our signature sponsor for this season of Mustang football. They have just opened up a brand new office just last year, deep in the heart of downtown Apopka, across from Kitland Nelson Park. A beautiful new facility. Don't forget to ask for your Wekiva discount when you head over and get your teeth straightened out by Dr. Baptiste and his fabulous team at Baptiste Orthodontics.
6.
Brandon Fields once again on the carry, and once again it is Johnny Cheney on the stop for the Mustangs. This one slightly less successful than the last one, but I think the Panthers will still take that. A gain of 4.5, 5 yards on the play that takes the ball down to the Mustang 28-yard line.
So again, Mark, now that things have settled down somewhat and DP's actually going to a huddle here, these two teams are very similar as far as their general approach of how to attack the opponent. Coach Bedison said there's an almost identical makeup among Panther teams as well as in comparison to us. The defense serves as the anchor and the mentality is to grind out victory.
This time we're going to get a handoff to Holland. Handoff to Navalin Holland, and Naheem Kendall is there and ready for it. What? What'd you say?
Red by 8. 8 got him.
So Wekiva showing...
Kendall Wilson picks up the tackle for loss there. That pulls the ball back to the 30-yard line for a loss, the 35-yard line for a loss of 7 on the play.
So the defense showing its prowess there. First time this game we've seen that vaunted defense come to life there. Right side of the line collapsed as soon as the ball was snapped.
Ball's dropped and bounces right back into his hands, so he got away with that one.
21.
Antoine Johnson on the tackle for the Mustangs after the ball is fumbled and recovered by Navon Holland.
So DP catching somewhat of a break there with the ball bouncing straight back up into Nevin's hands. However, the bigger picture is that's really a wasted play there, Mark.
Yeah, especially when you really needed that on third down, because that's going to put the ball at just the 30-yard line, which still, even though it's a gain of 5, 4th and 8 coming up for the Panthers. And so now they are right in that sweet spot where it's a little long for most high school kickers to have a good shot at a field goal, but not far enough that it's really worth punting. In trouble, we're going to get a sack.
7 and...
Great pursuit there by the Wekiva defense.
Number 7, Johnny Cheney teaming up with Antoine Johnson for a Mustang sack.
So Cheney was the first in there, the linebacker. He was able to get in to the backfield and caused Givens to have to turn back to the inside, and Johnson was waiting for him. Great teamwork there, but also great opportunity by Johnson as well as Cheney reading not only the situation but the actual play, what was coming down.
A loss of 7 on the play, and it turns the ball over to the Mustangs on downs. They take over at their own 37-yard line.
What's Givens' number?
18.
So now as we get the switch here, Mark.
Sear fakes the handoff to Thomas, goes around the outside corner himself.
21 non-runners.
The ball is spotted at the 38-yard line, perhaps the 39.
Who ran that?
Gain of 2 on the play.
16.
Pass complete to Harleonte Reed. And he's taken down by Miles Wiley.
Seventeen yards.
Gain 12.
Oh, yeah, 12 yards. So the ball right at midfield here. And again, as I started to say, these teams are very similar in their approach of how they attack the opponent.
Stop by 24.
Brendan Sear on the QB keep. He's taken down by number 24, Cameron Metcalf. A gain of 1 on the play that puts the ball just inside Panther territory at the 49-yard line for 2nd and 9.
So to continue the quote there by Bedison, of course, he said both teams are similar. The approach of how to attack the opponent develops out of what the defense can do. Don't commit mistakes, having a damaging impact, execute power rushing, and let the defense create the positive positions. Added an attempt to use explosiveness as the complement about a handful of times, and you wind up with the opponent's backs being up against the wall.
The pass is complete to Tamarian Foster. Stop is made by number 21, Jalen Moore, and that puts the ball just short of first down yards. It'll be 3rd and 2 from the Panther 42-yard line after a gain of 7 yards.
Who caught it?
23.
34, stop by 5.
Amari Thomas on the carry. Shai Gaskin gets him for a loss.
And so far, Mark, both teams have pretty much gone with no huddle. I don't believe Wekiva's ran a play out after a huddle yet. I know DP did a couple of times on that last possession. And again, Mark, we've mentioned it several times. Going without a huddle is something new to Wekiva this year. I don't believe any time in their history they have gone primarily no huddle.
The Mustangs will request their first timeout of the first half.
And also, to continue Coach Bedison's thought and really the general approach both these teams make up, their approach of how they attack the opponent is the same basic philosophy. It goes back, and you can count it under the umbrella of games are lost 90% of the time as opposed to win. But Wekiva has won 2 of the last 3 meetings. In both those games, Wekiva has won the turnover battle. The one game that DP won, which of course was the state semifinal in 2017, on the way to the state championship, DP won the turnover battle. And in that particular game, too, I also remember very quickly Wekiva had a couple turnovers right at the beginning of the game and fell behind 14-0 before the end of the first quarter.
And the Mustangs with a good effort to keep it out of the end zone, but it will be a touchback on the punt by Brendan Sear.
Is that 23 seconds? So now that we've seen DP gone almost a quarter into the game, with DP taking over the ball at their own 20, they are a very much more versatile team than we've seen in the past, As far as their formations and particular variations of those formations, they do use all three permutations of the tight end, 0 or 1 or 2. And of course, the fullback lining up depends on how many tight ends are used.
One on the stop.
And they do also very balanced in the number of receivers and as far 0 to 4 and how many are on each side, 1 and 3 or 2 and 2.
Jalen Washington catches the pass for the Panthers. Larry Preston finally drags him down, but not before getting inside Mustang territory at the 48-yard line for a gain of 32 on the completion.
So again, Mark, as we mentioned at the beginning, both these teams, and I just mentioned it again, both these teams pretty much keep their play on offense close to the vest. They'll throw in about half a dozen risky plays where they try to open up the offense and go downfield. And both these teams have been successful, and that's when they do call those over-the-top, down-the-field passes.
That takes us to the end of the first quarter. We remain scoreless. The Panthers will have the ball near midfield when we switch sides and come back for the second set of 12 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you here live in the field, if you have friends and family who are not able to join us in person for tonight's game, make sure they know that they can tune in live on our YouTube channel, Wekiva Sports, or on the NFHS network. We simulcast tonight's game to both of those, so you can tune your favorite smart TV, mobile device, or computer to our channel. Again, we are Wekiva Sports on YouTube, and we also are on the NFHS network. You can get those direct links from our website, WekivaMustangs.com, or from our Twitter feed, Wekiva Sports.
Ball's at the 48.
Yep.
And who caught it?
17.
So both these teams also like to rely on the take what is given approach.
Handoff is made to number 4, Navon Holland, and there is a flag on the play. Holding called against the Panther offense. That's a 10-yard penalty from the spot of the foul and a replay of first down.
So both these teams have had significant down-the-field plays, good yardage, and then they commit a penalty. Again, as we mentioned, mistakes were really the story of last week's game against Edgewater for Wekiva. DP has done the same in both their losses, and that trend does continue as we start the second period here. Pretty much for every one step the offense has taken forward, they commit self-damaging mistakes in the form of penalties and take a step backwards.
Navon Holland on the carry. Breaks a tackle by Tony Newsom, and finally, with some help from KJ Wilson, is taken down.
Loss of 5.
A loss of 5 on the play.
Where's the ball?
That puts the ball deeper into Mustang territory at the 37-yard line.
You mean DP territory?
Yeah.
And again, that penalty really put DP in that position of running a play that Wekiva could sniff out and knew right away.
The pass is complete to number 13, Ledger Hatch. Larry Preston makes the stop. And you can see there, Larry Preston lost sight of where the ball was, and therefore he was not quite ready to make the play as Hatch caught it. It was a very well-thrown ball, though, and that'll be a big first down. Ball spotted at the 38-yard line of Mustang territory for a gain of 25 and a Panther first down.
So again, I can't state this enough. I know it's beating a dead horse, but it's really been the story of the game. Those big plays have really been the story, keeping DP, the pressure from DP on Wekiva's defense here.
6.
Fields on the carry.
6 on the stop.
Brandon Fields stopped by Jamel Lynch after a pickup of about 5 yards. Make it a gain of 4 officially, and that puts the ball at the 34-yard line and brings up 2nd and 6.
So again, exactly what you want if you're DP here. 4 yards on first down. Sets up a 2nd and medium, possibly even a 3rd and medium distance. One other thing about DP's offense is they do like to use the shotgun. They also line up only one running back. And when they do, there you see it, they actually run they line the running back up behind Givens, the quarterback. That's somewhat unusual in today's game.
Brandon Fields on the carry, stopped by Tony Newsom after a gain of 5 yards. It brings up 3rd and short.
Most offenses line up their running backs offset next to the quarterback. And now you're seeing DP just physically manhandling Wekiva's defensive line. Nothing fancy here. They're running the ball straight between the tackles, up the middle, and overpowering Wekiva's D-line.
Brandon Fields once again has the carry for the Panthers. It's good for a 1st down. That puts the ball just inside the 25-yard line at the 24 for a gain of 5. The stop made by Kendall Wilson and Nathan Pierre.
So Wekiva here is going to have to make some adjustments. I've been very lucky in the fact that DP has not scored yet. They've really, the offensive battle has really gone to DP.
DP is going for broke. They've got an open man.
Touchdown.
Pass is complete to number 13, Ledger Hatch, in the end zone for a Panther touchdown.
And that touchdown was set up by the 3 rushing plays, getting that 1st down. Wekiva had to bring men up to the box there, a couple extra men on the line of scrimmage, 1-on-1 coverage in the backfield, and a beautifully thrown ball by Givens, putting the ball only where his receiver could catch that. So excellent route run there.
35 with the extra point.
Extra point by Riley Stevens is good. That puts the Panthers up 7-0 with 8 minutes, 57 seconds remaining in the 1st half.
So that was a 9-play drive there by Mark, 80 yards. But really the key play in that was the first play, a 28-yard completion. And going back to what we were saying about running to passing, DP likes to choose its spots to run. They had 6 rushing plays, only 3 passing plays, but all 3 of those passing plays were completed. And they were completed for 60 of the 80 yards. So a very efficient passing game there.
35 was the kicker, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Riley Stevens' kickoff will go out of the end zone for a touchback. The Mustangs will start their next possession from their own 20-yard line.
So, of course, we did mention on offense, DP is much more versatile, uses much more variations than in the past. The same is true of the defense here. They like to go between the 3-4 and 4-3, somewhat unusual. They're going with a 4-3 right now, 4 linebackers. And they like to use cover 3 in the secondary.
The pass is complete to number 81, Fletcher Charles. Jedi Smith has the tackle, and there's a flag on the play.
Who caught that?
81.
31?
81.
82. So as we await the penalty.
Personal foul. Roughing the passer is called against the defense. That'll be a 15-yard penalty. And the result of the play is a Mustang 1st down.
How much was the catch?
Well, we're
No,
at the...
just the catch.
I know, I didn't see it. 3, 4, so... What was the yardage on the catch?
9-yard gain.
So a break caught there by Wekiva. Again, DP started their last possession, which ended with a touchdown, a 28-yard completion. Wekiva responds with 24 yards total on their first play of this possession.
29 and 5.
Amari Thomas on the carry for the Mustangs. Stopped by Shai Gaskin and Steven Dix of the Panther defense. No gain on the play. It brings up 2nd and 10 for the Mustangs. Mustangs look.
16-23.
An open man, number 23, Tamarian Foster.
7 in the neighborhood.
So a quick, let's get a few yards here, find our rhythm pass.
3.
Is that 4 yards?
3.
3.
A gain of 3 on the play puts the ball at the 47-yard line. 3rd and 7 coming up for Wekiva. And it looks like a little bit of confusion here. It looks like they were starting to call the water break timeout and then realized that we're really not close enough for that yet. In high school football in Florida, an official's timeout is required at a convenient stopping point near the 6-minute mark of each period.
Yeah, the halfway point. So now you're really seeing where that missed field goal from Wekiva is coming into play. You'd have a 7-3 deficit, obviously much different feel to the game being down 4 points instead of an entire touchdown. But the momentum is now all in DP's favor.
Pass intended for Aquilas Sumter falls incomplete. And you can see just what happened there. Sumter realized he needed to get back to that route a moment too late, and then he tripped on his shoelaces, was not able to get back to the route.
Yeah, again, going back to last week, just mistakes being made. Obviously, the most noticeable were the turnovers and the sacks, but those are the subtle mistakes which lead to losing 2 teams like Edgewater and Dr. Phillips. Just mental mistakes of not running the right route and realize not knowing what you need to do from start to finish before the snap.
Good looking punt by Sear. He gets it inside the 20. Brennan Sear on the punt, and the ball rolls out of bounds. Looks like the official spot will be at the 23-yard line.
So again, Wekiva doing a very nice job, at least forcing DP to have to move long distances. That didn't matter in their last possession. They drove the ball 80 yards. So we'll see now if Wekiva can take advantage of forcing DP to start 77 yards from the end zone this time.
Snap to Givens. And they'll go up the middle this time to open the drive.
4 on the carry, 4 on the stop.
Yvonne Holland has the carry for the Panthers. Stop made by Luther Johnson of the Mustang defense. A gain of 2 on the play. That brings up 2nd and 8 for the Panthers from the from their own 26-yard line.
So again, DP was very efficient when they went to that passing game on the last possession, throwing 3 out of 9 times, but that 3 passes accounted for 60 of the 80 yards. See if Wekiva's made some adjustments here.
Short pass is picked up by Jones, and he'll have to be dragged down by Larry Preston, and that's Antoine Johnson.
10.
It looked like it might have hit the turf there, but they called it complete.
So up here in the press box, it looked like that ball bounced, and at the very least it was trapped by Johnson. Nonetheless, the refs did say that he caught it, never touched the ground, and there was a big lane right along that left hash mark. And, of course, Johnson also had the great angle. He was able to execute his speed, which also we've talked about the formations, DP being a very much more versatile and using a lot more variation than they have in the past, but they're also a very speedy team, quicker than you've seen in the past. And because of their speed, they like to get out past the edges and past the hash mark very quickly and into open space where they can utilize that speed.
Jaquez Jones makes the catch for a 29-yard gain before being taken down by Larry Preston and Antoine Johnson. That puts the ball inside Mustang territory at the 45-yard line and brings up 1st and 10.
So this is a very critical possession for Wekiva. I don't think I'm saying anything that you don't already know out there, but Wekiva really needs, not only can they not afford to fall behind by 2 touchdowns.
One man to beat, and he does beat him, and this is going to be a DP touchdown.
So there you go, the worst case scenario. What I was just talking about coming to fruition. Wekiva's lost the momentum is where I was going with that. And Wekiva really has not been able to stop that DP offense.
Brandon Fields gets away from the Mustang defensive line, goes 45 yards into the end zone for a Panther touchdown.
Who was that? Was that 4?
6.
6, it was 6. And we mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, Mark, keep an eye out for Fields and Howland. That time it was Fields really just busting through that line. A couple of missed tackles there. He just overpowered the defenders, and suddenly you got wide open Green for about 40 yards.
Riley Stevens' extra point is good. That makes it a 14-0 game for the Panthers with 5 minutes, 33 seconds remaining in the first half.
So that ball, this time they did not go to the outside. Again, as I mentioned, DP has a lot of speed, so they like to get to the edge and the hash marks. That time, that was a simple draw just behind the left tackle and the left guard. Wekiva really got confused. They did not read that play. Fields hit the line very hard, shoulder down, ran over the linebackers who were leaning backwards, and next thing you know, he's got 40 yards of green right in front of him. Excellent job by the DP line, sealing off those angles for Fields to be able to follow. Bad job by Wekiva allowing that to happen.
And this one has no chance of return. Riley Stevens puts it through the end zone for a touchback. The Mustangs will start from the 20-yard line.
So, Mark, let's go back again to that opening possession. We're now looking at a 14-0 deficit instead of 14-3. But even more importantly, it seems like ever since that field goal was missed, Wekiva has not had any momentum. They just really haven't been able to sustain anything. They've had 3 possessions since that first possession, ending with the missed field goal, and they have yet to gain a first down. So it's as much tactical and strategy as momentum, the damage that missed field goal has caused.
The Mustangs will request their second timeout of the first half. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to remind you we have a lot of special activities coming up next week, and it begins... Well, actually, we'll have Spirit Days all week, but it begins in the evening events with Thursday night's Powder Puff Homecoming game. We hope you'll join that. That's always a good time. That'll be right here at Baptiste Orthodontic Stadium. Then coming up on Friday, get here very, very, very early for the homecoming game because we will have the homecoming parade starting at 6 o'clock on the other side of campus down near the bus loop and making its way down here to the football field. We'll then have the presentation of our homecoming court, and then we'll have the crowning of the king and queen at halftime. The marching bands will still play, but their performances will be after the conclusion of the fourth quarter. Javon Coleman on the completion, stopped by Jedi Smith of the Panther defense. It's good for a gain of 4 yards on the completion. It brings up 2nd and 6 for the Mustangs. from the 24-yard line.
So again, Mark, a key moment in both of the touchdown drives. The first and second plays were passes of over 20 yards. Dr. Phillips continues to run the ball about 66% of the time. But the most damage as far as the biggest gains are on passes.
Pass intended for Fletcher Charles, but it wasn't completed to him, but it was completed instead to number 3. That's Aquila Sumter. Picks up the pass that was batted away from Fletcher Charles and gets a big gain for the Mustangs.
So Wekiva getting a huge break there. To be honest, you should never have two receivers within a couple of yards of each other. That means one of the receivers ran the wrong route.
Well,
46 yards on the game.
sometimes two wrongs make a right.
Yep.
Who ultimately got the stop?
21.
Were they at the 25?
30.
30.
The ball is spotted at the 30-yard line for a gain of 46 yards on the completion to Sumter. And, well, that'll help the stats a lot.
Now, of course, the question now, Wekiva needs to take this opportunity and turn it into points.
19 on defense.
Pass intended for Fletcher Charles falls incomplete. And clearly, Charles was not even turned around and looking at that ball by the time it zipped past the hairs on his neck.
More mistakes by the receivers. They just don't look sharp tonight. As we mentioned, Wekiva got a tremendous break, and they got away with a huge mistake on the previous play. One of the two receivers was not where he was supposed to be. Of course, the ball should have been caught to begin with. DP remains in their 4-3. Actually, look more like they're in a 4-4.
Pass intended for Tamarian Foster falls incomplete.
And now we're seeing a continuation, as we mentioned throughout this broadcast. Bedison has talked about mistakes and how they don't really seem to be getting fewer and fewer and less damaging. One of those mistakes is the drop passes.
Yeah, and the Mustangs, now facing 3rd and 10, have shown moments of brilliance, but so far have had no payoff for any of that. And so they'll need to make a conversion here, and that is not what we wanted to see from that.
Yeah, DP's...
Number 5, Shai Gaskin takes down the Mustangs in the backfield. Jamon Coleman on the carry.
DP knew what was coming as soon as that ball was snapped. They flooded that backfield. They had four different defenders in the backfield on the left side. Of course, now the importance is Wekiva was looking at a 47-yard field goal, which is probably a little bit out of Wilson's range.
But yeah, now they'd be looking at much more than that.
They would have at least been in a position where it made no sense to punt, and they would have tried to convert the 4th down into a 1st down. Now you take away whatever opportunity for that conversion attempt.
Brendan Sear gets a healthy amount of hang time, and the ball is downed at the 12-yard line. The Panthers will start their next possession from there.
And to be honest, Mark, with 4 minutes left in the first half, Wekiva looks like it's really still suffering from a hangover after losing last week and after giving up those 31 points in row to Edgewater. They just don't look as sharp as they have in previous games. As we mentioned, Wekiva's problem has not been a sharpness, it's not been execution, it's not been really a lack of understanding and doing what they're supposed to. It's been the mistakes which has caused a lot of the problems they've had.
Devon Holland finds a lane, breaks through. He's got one guy to beat, and yeah, that's...
Good block by 17.
Devon Holland takes off and runs and finally steps out of bounds at the 28-yard line.
31 knocks him out.
So we'll have the
17 with a good block.
will have the amount of that rush, but obviously a very long game. And that's really where I was going with my analysis of the mistakes before last week, being the story of Wekiva's season as far as their biggest issue.
A gain of 59 yards on the play. That puts the ball at the 29-yard line.
Tonight they just don't look sharp. They don't look like they're doing anything.
Pass intended for Ledger Hatch falls incomplete. The coverage was provided by number 27, Antoine Johnson, and there's a flag on the play.
Was that Pat? Was that 21-yard line?
29.
29. Oh, he went from the 29 to the 29.
He went from the 12 to the 29.
Oh,
Last play.
Pass interference called against the Mustang defense. That's 15-yard penalty from the previous spot, and it results in a Panther first down.
where's the ball?
So that should put the ball, well, technically that'd be half the distance to the goal. So it'll be a 14.5-yard penalty instead of a 15-yard penalty. Yeah, either way, it'll be sufficient yardage for a first down.
Yes, and the ball will be inside the red zone. And now DP is threatening to put this score to 3 touchdowns before halftime.
Yeah, now the loss against Edgewater last week did not harm the Mustangs severely in the polls. Back-to-back losses against Dr. Phillips, however, would most certainly have a negative impact on the Mustang state rankings. Number 8, Jaden Teller on a Wildcat snap into the end zone for a Panther touchdown.
So there's the extreme display of consistency and inefficiency. The first and only time that number 8, what's his name?
Jaden Taylor.
Taylor has run the ball tonight. 15 yards, 1 touchdown. That's as efficient as possible. And again, worst possible situation for Wekiva, 21-0, and there's still 3:31 left in the ball in the first half. And again,
Stevens on the extra point, and that makes it a 21-0 game with 3 minutes 31 seconds remaining in the first half.
And again, Mark, I know I just mentioned this, but just that drive was a perfect example. Wekiva just is not playing well tonight. They look like they still have a hangover from giving up those 31 consecutive points against Edgewater last week. As I mentioned in the past, it's really been the mistakes. Their play has been at a level where they've been able to overcome the mistakes. Tonight, they're not even really losing because they're making mistakes. You can't point out a mistake here or there leading to a touchdown. They're just playing very poorly. Missed tackles. They look like they have a lack of focus. As we mentioned, even though Wekiva got very lucky and wound up with that big gain on the tip pass on their last possession, that was pure luck. 2 receivers should never be more than 2, should never be within this 5 yards of the same of each other.
7:14 late breaking 7.
Stevens on the kick. This one will be returned.
38 on the stop.
Jamon Coleman makes the return for the Mustangs. He returns the ball from the 5 to the 31-yard line for a return of 26 yards.
So,
Stop is made by Malachi Merced, and the Mustangs will take over with 1st and 10 at their own 31-yard line.
So, Mark, I don't think I'm saying anything of great shock, or you need to be a football guru facing a 21-0 deficit with 3.5 minutes before halftime. Wekiva needs to move that ball downfield. Wekiva needs to get a score. Wekiva, at the very least, needs to establish some kind of blueprint for being able to move the ball and at least give Dr. Phillips a challenge here.
Brendan Sear keeps it for himself and gets a gain of 1 yard before being taken down by Jalen Moore. 2nd and 9 coming up for Wekiva from their own 32-yard line.
So ever since that field goal was missed at the end of the Wekiva's first possession, this game has been all DP, and Wekiva's not been able to do anything on offense or defense. See that again there. Nowhere for Sear to run. Certainly that was not his intention to run. Nobody was open downfield.
Sear has to keep it for himself. Stopped again by number 29 of the Panther defense. That's Stephen Dix.
And another result tangibly is facing another 3rd and long.
6. 5 on the hit. Five hit quarterback.
Shai Gaskin on the coverage, and the pass falls incomplete.
No, they didn't send it to me until after I didn't have access to the call, but I do have them electronically.
And there I think you see another example, perhaps the best, the most definitive of just Wekiva just really looks lost tonight. Again, it's not just the mistakes, but they really look like they were not sure what pass they were supposed to be throwing there. And Dr. Phillips here is going to have 2 minutes to do something with the football as well. So the worst possible situation, not only was Wekiva forced to punt, not gaining a first down, but they also did not use up much of the clock.
6 on the stop.
Devon Holland on the return. Jamel Lynch makes the stop for very short return yardage.
Ball's on the 30.
So now, as we mentioned earlier, DP likes to go with the one back directly behind the quarterback like old school football. This time they lined the running back fields up offset.
The Panthers will request their second timeout of the first half. That leaves each team with 1 timeout remaining, 1:57 remaining in the second quarter.
So, Mark, you mentioned the rankings. Of course, Wekiva would take a big tumble. I wouldn't be surprised if they fall out of the state rankings altogether if they can't turn this 21-0 and really just the quality of play being so bad around. But you have to also look at the playoffs. Ultimately, the rankings don't really mean anything if you don't get into the playoffs. Wekiva would lose its second consecutive game, and it would be a second consecutive game to a team that has a reputation and expectations every year of not only making the playoffs, but winning in the playoffs and going deep into the playoffs.
Of course, other than last week, the Mustangs have been a second-half team, so we'll see what Coach Bedison says to inspire them in the locker room.
It's 2 weeks for Coe.
Sorry, what did you say?
8 on the carry, 60 on the stop.
Jaden Taylor on the carry.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can talk about strategy, tactics, mistakes, all you want, and we really have. But basically, it comes down to none of that matters if you're just not playing well. Again, Wekiva just does not look like it's ready to play tonight between the ears. They're doing a lot of stuff that we have not seen them do probably in 5 or 6 years.
Jaden Taylor gains 1 yard before being stopped by Pierre Warren. 2nd and 9.
8. Let's go right on the clock. 41 on the stop.
Jaden Taylor on the carry. The stop is made by Nathan Pierre. That puts the ball at the 35-yard line for a gain of 4 yards. Brings up 3rd and 5 And we are now under a minute remaining, and Neil, it looks like the Panthers would be perfectly content to go into the locker room with a 3-touchdown lead as they are just burning clock here in the final minute.
Yeah, that last play was we have a nothing to lose. Let's take a shot and maybe we can catch a break and get a big gain here. If we don't, we're still going into halftime. Not only 21-0, but completely dominating this game on both sides of the line.
31 on stop. Eight of 9.
Who was on the carry?
8.
Thank you. Jaden Taylor on the carry. The stop is made by Azion Scott. That puts the ball at the 44-yard line for a gain of 9 on the play. 1st and 10 Panthers.
So as we mentioned before rushing for the touchdown, which made the score 21-0, Taylor had not even touched the ball. He's now run the ball 4 times and gained 15, 24, 28. 28 yards on 4 carries. That's about as in a touchdown, about as efficient as possible for a running back.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to join us. Next week, we'll have homecoming festivities going on all week during the school day, and in the evening, we'll have the Powder Puff homecoming game next Thursday evening. We hope you'll join us for what is always a fun event, and then coming up on Friday, get here very early. Make sure you make plans. Kickoff will be at 7 o'clock as usual, but we will have the homecoming parade beginning down by the bus loop at 6 o'clock. They'll make their way down to the football stadium, where we will feature the presentation of the homecoming court. We'll crown the king and queen at halftime, and then the marching bands will play after the game.
So 11.6 seconds left. DP's going to take a shot at the end zone, nothing to lose.
Pass intended for Jaquez Jones falls incomplete.
And they're going to have one more, what do we have to lose, shot at the end zone here.
Yeah, there's no point in punting with 4.9 seconds left on the clock.
And before we go into halftime, I know I'm beating this like a dead horse, but Wekiva came out. They looked good. They looked strong. They looked like the team we have known to come and love in that first possession. They missed the field goal. Would have been a 3-0 lead, set somewhat of a tone, not only as far as playing ahead, but also establishing what they do well, establishing their strengths, and really exerting some type of force of will. Since then, it's been all DP, and quite frankly, Wekiva looks like it still has a hangover from giving up 31 points to Edgewater last week. You know, this really
Brandon
is...
Fields on the carry. Kendall Wilson has the stop. And that would have been a first down for the Panthers, as it was just about to the 45-yard line for a gain of 11. But it takes us to halftime. And so the Mustangs and Panthers will go into the locker rooms with a 21-0 lead on the board for Dr. Phillips.
Yeah, and so, Mark, to finish up here real quick, this isn't really even a matter about strategy, tactics, matchups. Wekiva just does not look like they're ready to play since they gave up that field goal.
Rise of a Legend. Now taking the field is the 2019 Dr. Phillips High School Panther Band. The principal of Dr. Phillips High School is Dr. Suzanne Knight. Band directors are Charles Watford, Nicole Nasrallah, and J.T. Patrick. Percussion instructors are Matt Brown, Bobby Matheson, and Jeremy Catalinic. The color guard instructors are Kristen Bryant, Heather Rothman, and Nicole Thompson. Drum majors are Ethan Burke, Diane Lee, and Jesse Rigsby, and the field commander is Jordan Costagliola. The band will be performing their 2019 halftime show entitled Rise of a Legend, Movement 1, O Fortuna, and Movement 2, Deliverance from God of War, Movement 3, The Reigns of Castamere from Game of Thrones, and Movement 4, Thor, The Dark World. Please welcome the 2019 Dr. Phillips High School Panther Band. I'm getting in as fast as I can. Thank you.
They say every generation has a legend. A chosen one. Written down in eternity. Because legends never die. Are you the legend? You'll never see the price it costs, or the scars collected all their lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the Dr. Phillips High School Marching Panthers.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the field for your halftime entertainment, the pride of Wekiva, your Mustang Marching Band. The Wekiva High School Marching Mustangs are under the direction of Mr. Joshua Grossniklaus. The color guard is under the direction of Mr. Michael McKee. The associate director is Mr. Frank Taylor. The brass tech is Mr. James Dawson. And the percussion instructor is Mr. Robert Cross. The Marching Mustangs are under the field command of drum majors Layla Allen and Amaria Patrick. The band captain is Antonio Martinez, and the lieutenants are Alyssa Sanchez and Caleb Edwards. The drum captains are Jacob Saris and Jonathan Williams. The guard captain is Shelma Demosthane. The Wekiva Marching Mustangs are proud to present to you tonight our 2019 field show, Fusion, featuring the music from Cirque du Soleil. Selections tonight will include Distorted from Lanuba, Journey of Man and Youth from Journey of Man, and Incantation from Quidam. ladies and gentlemen, the pride of Wekiva, your marching Mustangs.
Check the first downs. What are the first downs?
DP 13, Wekiva 4.
13 to 4.
Well, Neil, we don't have a lot of time here because the bands ran a little bit long at halftime, but we have not seen the game that the Mustangs hoped to create so far this half. The Panthers have first downed the Mustangs 13 to 4. Total yards, they have nearly tripled the Mustangs' performance, 312 to 125. And hopefully Coach Bettison had some encouraging words in the locker room, probably some fiery words that took some paint off the walls if I know Coach Bettison. But with any luck, the Mustangs will come out with a little bit more energy in the second half than we saw in the first.
Yeah, I guess you could say here, jokingly, it's a good thing that I, as a color commentator, don't get paid for the word or each of my concepts, because there's not really a lot you can say about this. We mentioned it all throughout the first half. Wekiva came down. They were able to get inside the red zone. They attempted a 32-yard field goal. And that's really all they've done. They moved the ball 44 yards on that opening possession. So of their 119 yards, almost half of them came on that first possession. Since then, they haven't done much. If you're the coach, there's nothing you can really do at this point. Forget matchups, forget tactics, forget strategies, forget all the numbers, because this is a team that looks like it still has a hangover from last week, giving up 31 points. And if you're Coach Bettison, you go in there and you give the fire and brimstone speech. The good news is, real quick though, is fortunately DP is only up by 3 touchdowns, so it's not impossible to come back if we see the same Wekiva team that we saw in the first 2 or 3 games.
Jalen Washington has a fair catch to open up the Panthers' first drive of the second half. That puts the ball at the 28-yard line, and that is where the Panthers will begin. And Neil, to your point, the Mustangs had some moments of inspiration in the first half, but were never able to get a payoff for it. They got inside the red zone a couple of times. They had a couple of good plays, but were never able to capitalize on it. So whatever positive stats they had have not materialized into any points. There was the blown field goal. We've had several instances of blown coverage, and here we are with a goose egg on the scoreboard. And now DP gets the ball first to open up the half. Number 6, Brandon Fields, will have the first offensive snap of the second half delivered to him. Stop is made for the Mustangs by Tony Newsom. It's a gain of 5 yards on the play, and it brings up 2nd and 5 from the Panthers' 33-yard line.
And Fields had 126 yards in that first half. Of course, he had the 45-yard touchdown. So even if you take that out, you're still looking at 81 yards on 8 carries. That's over 10 yards average. Again, you can look at any of these stats you want, and you pretty much understand why the score is 21-0.
Brandon Fields on the carry, flag on the play. Holding is called against the Panther offense. That is a 10-yard penalty from the spot of the foul. And a replay of 2nd down. And that actually happened about 3 yards into the backfield, so that rolls the Panthers all the way back to the 20-yard line and brings up 2nd and 18.
So, yes, it's been a very long night. So
Panthers go deep. Got an open man, and good coverage by Preston there. The pass intended for Jaquez Jones, and it falls incomplete.
Yeah, tonight has been a very long night so far for Wekiva. And the thing, about DP taking this 21-0 lead, for a while, I'd say until about 3 minutes into the second quarter, the game was still scoreless. If you looked at the score alone, you got the feeling that this was a very balanced game as far as neither team really dominating the other. But but if you were here watching the game, or of course for those of you who are watching us, and thank you, you never really got the feeling that it was a 0-0 ball game.
Flag on the play prior to the snap. False start called against the Panther offense. That's a 5-yard penalty from the previous spot, and a replay of third down.
There never was that feeling that it was 0-0. You just felt like it was a matter of time before DP was going to not only take the lead, but take the lead by multiple touchdowns. So this has been a very uninspiring performance by Wekiva on both sides of the football. And as I said before we went into halftime there, it's not even a matter of Wekiva making mistakes, self-damaging mistakes like they have up until this game. In particular last week against Edgewater, which turns the game around, and we're going to see another mistake here.
Pass is complete to Jaquez Jones. Larry Preston is there to make the stop, but not before the pass is completed for a major gain.
This is a team that just looks like mentally it is not ready to play. This looks like a team that has no inspiration, really no bite to its game, really no focus as far as wanting to make a statement.
A gain of 46 on the play sets up 1st and 10 in Mustang territory at the 39-yard line.
And there we just saw it again, a long pass completed.
Brandon Fields on the carry. Luther Johnson makes the stop after a gain of about 3 yards. That brings up 2nd and 7 from the Mustang 36-yard line.
And Mark, we also talked about the playoffs. Wekiva's become a regular, making it, I believe, 3 straight years now. But if they lose this game, that playoff berth is going to be in jeopardy. They could go from being an odds-on favorite to being borderline qualifier.
Yeah, and that rule that used to guarantee the district runner-up a spot in the playoffs that so many years spurned the Mustangs, thanks to Apopka and West Orange, could now come back to haunt them now that no longer exists. Yvonne Holland on the carry, stopped by Jamel Lynch. And that's a gain of 5. Or excuse me, that's a gain of 1 on the play to take the ball up to the 35-yard line.
And now, of course, and I don't think you have to be a football guru to understand this, but DP with the lead, they're fairly deep into Mustang territory. They're going to hold on to this ball as long as they can. They're not going to do anything fancy. This is exactly what we're going to see here. A lot of handoffs between the tackles. Try to take up as much time as you can, but more importantly, don't commit any mistakes, which allows Wekiva to have second life.
KJ Wilson with a Mustang sack.
And even though that is a loss there, which loses some momentum as far as being able to drive the ball downfield, it's more important to give up a play like that than to take a risk and give up and put Wekiva in a position where they can gain some second life by making a mistake.
The Wilson sack results in a loss of 8 on the play, and it brings up 4th and 14 for the Panthers.
And of course, we didn't really mention much about DP being what DP does once they get the lead, or a big lead, because we didn't think that was going to happen.
The punt by Riley is down at the 11-yard line. As Riley Stevens on the punt, and the Mustangs will take over with 1st and 10 from there.
So, and this is exactly what I'm talking about as far as taking over possession at the 11-yard line.
And actually, Neil, that was the first time Dr. Phillips has punted all day.
So, yeah, you gave up a sack. You gave up the opportunity to at least attempt a field goal. But now you put Wekiva in a position where they have to move the ball 89 yards. And if I'm DP, I'm certainly willing to take that exchange. I'm willing to take my chances that Wekiva can't move the ball 89 yards, given that they've only moved the ball about 50 yards since missing that field goal at the end of the first possession.
The Panthers request their first time out of the second half. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank our good friends at Baptiste Orthodontics, now with 3 convenient locations here in the Central Florida area to serve you. They are our signature sponsor this season for the Mustang football program. And we could not be prouder of the relationship that Dr. Baptiste has with Orange County Public Schools and Wekiva High School in particular. Stop by for all of your orthodontic needs and make sure to mention that you are a Wekiva High School student for special benefits. Amari Thomas on the carry. Stop for the Panthers is made by Cameron Metcalf. Takes the ball out to the 18-yard line.
Well, that's a strong start there for Wekiva. Big in terms of yardage for the rush.
29 on the carry.
Jamon Coleman carries for the Mustangs. Gets the ball a bit closer to the first down marker for a gain of 2. The ball's at the 20, and it brings up 3rd and 1.
It's been a while, Mark. Really might even be back to that first possession since Wekiva's had a 3rd and short, and it doesn't really matter.
29 among others on the stop. 34 on the carry.
Amari Thomas on the carry. And the peloton of Panther defenders led by number 29, Stephen Dix. No gain on the play, and it brings up 4th and 1. And Neil, like we said before, moments of inspiration followed by sputtering out. And boy, you're tempted to go for it here since you only have to get 1 yard, but at the same time, it's disaster if you fail. And so Sear will line up to punt here. Low snap, handled well. That's a good boot.
Yeah, really, I think Sear's been our best weapon tonight as a punter.
Yeah, we mentioned that last week, that up until the Edgewater game, he had been effective enough, but not much better than average over the opening part of the season. And he has actually proven to be very effective for the Mustangs in the last 2 games, even though the Mustangs lost last week. But certainly the field position game has been dramatically helped on his heels, no pun intended. No, that's not true at all. That pun was a little bit intended.
And I just also like to point out, Mark, you mentioned there before that punt that Wekiva's have moments of brilliance followed by lackluster play. It's not just been that, but taking one step further, the lackluster play, I would say, has outnumbered the moments of brilliance by roughly a 3-to-1 count.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the midpoint of the 3rd period, and so we'll pause here for an official timeout. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not already doing so, make sure that you are registered for schedule updates. We have been very fortunate, knock on wood or whatever hard surface happens to be next to you, that we have not had any lightning delays yet this year. However, this is Florida in late summer, early fall, and so we know that those schedule updates can happen, particularly with our outdoor sports. Make sure that you are always in the know. Go to WekivaMustangs.com, click the register button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and you can give us your email address, your phone number, or both. We'll let you know anytime there is a change to the schedule.
Yeah, so Mark, we haven't had any lightning delays, but we have had some postponements due to that hurricane called Dorian.
Well, there was that.
So DP remains in the offset formation. There are 2 receivers on the left, 1 on the right.
That pass was intended for Devon Holland. It falls incomplete. Coverage courtesy of Luther Johnson. Brings up second down.
And again, there's an example of DP's philosophy as far as or approach of how to attack the opponent. Take your shot every now and then, pick your spots at taking that mid-range pass there. Of course, it's even more effective and even more so as far as what you're trying to accomplish once you get a 3-touchdown lead.
Yeah, it certainly gives Dr. Phillips options here. It takes the pressure off of them. It gives them the opportunity to play the game they want to play. They can stick to more conservative play. They do not have to take any major chances.
Yeah, and
Navon Holland is tackled by the Mustangs, Jamel Lynch, and that will be for a minimal gain on the play. It looks like about 2 yards.
Yeah, and as I mentioned on their first possession, at this point with a 21 lead halfway through the third quarter, you are in a position where if you do take a risk, if you're going to take a higher percentage risk play, you want to do exactly what we saw in that last pass. Throw it over the receiver, throw it, make sure that it's away from any of your from the defensive backs. You want to make sure if you get an incomplete pass, it's incomplete towards the end zone and
Panthers
not
go
underthrown.
deep, and it is overthrown.
See, and there again, you're going to see that the rest of the game.
That pass intended for Jaquez Jones. Overthrown and incomplete, and it brings up 4th down and 8 for the Panthers.
And at this point, it's more important if you're Dr. Phillips to not make a mistake, which gives Wekiva an opportunity to create second life here. You're willing to take even a loss like we saw at the end of that first possession of the second half.
Oh, yeah, that pass was overthrown, but there was zero chance that it was going to be intercepted. And that was clearly by design.
29 back, 35 punting.
And there's a mistake that I was just explaining. That's the mistake if you're Dr. Phillips you can't afford to make.
35, recover the snap, the bad snap. The 4, made sure you went nowhere.
This is the first time since that first possession Wekiva has had possession of the ball inside DP's 40.
The snap is fumbled, and it is recovered at the 25-yard line. Riley Stevens manages to take it under control. Luther Johnson made sure that that was where the play ended, and the Mustangs take over with great field position at the Panther 25-yard line.
Yeah, Mark, so now if Wekiva ever wanted to get back into this game as far as at least making it a challenge for DP, now is the opportunity. That was the opportunity that they've been looking for, the opportunity they needed to really be able to get on this board and cut into that lead.
Pass is complete to Tamarian Foster. Jalen Moore on the tackle, gain of 7 on the play. That puts the ball at the 18-yard line, just inside the red zone, and brings up 2nd and 3.
Completion, right?
Yeah. 81, route 2, 81, 24 on the stop.
That pass is complete to Fletcher Charles. Stop is made by number 24, Cameron Metcalf. That puts the ball inside the 10-yard line at looks to be about the 8. 1st and goal.
And there's exactly what I was talking about, Mark. Second life. 2 complete passes by Wekiva. I don't believe they've completed 2 passes since that first possession. Is that incomplete?
No, it's complete.
To who?
Harleonte Reed makes the catch and is immediately stopped by Jalen Moore.
Where is it? The 6?
On the 6.
So now 3 consecutive completed passes. What's Reed's number? 19?
86.
86.
34.
Amari Thomas on the carry, and
15. Stop on 15.
the stop is made by Panthers number 15, Alberto Guzman. Looked like he had a good run at it there.
5 yards.
Yeah. 16. Broken up by 21. Intended for 23.
So I really believe this is pretty much any opportunity, if you're Wekiva, to win this ball game, rest on this play here.
Pass intended for Tamarian Foster falls incomplete. 4th and goal for the Mustangs.
3.5 minutes left here in the third quarter.
And we will now pause for a Mustang timeout. Probably a timeout well spent there by the Mustangs.
And, by the way, Preston did come in. And, you know, I understand that you're trying to create some diversity there when you bring in Preston, but I'm not sure if that's really the best play if you're Wekiva because, again, everybody knows that when Larry Preston comes in, he's going to be running the ball.
Yeah, he is exclusively used by the Mustangs as that QB sneak, especially on goal line short-range plays. That kind of telegraphs what you're doing if Dr. Phillips has watched any Wekiva game film. And by virtue of the fact that we put it all on YouTube, it is not particularly hard to find.
So, yeah, and Larry is not a particularly big guy. He's about average size. You know, Sears about 6'3", 6'4", so he has some height and weight. Preston's an average guy. But nonetheless, like I said, this really, I believe that now the ball game comes down to this if Wekiva wants to get out of here with a victory.
Yeah, certainly a field goal does you no good here. Number 29, Javon Coleman into the end zone for a 1-yard Mustang touchdown.
And so Wekiva goes to the old shovel pass there. Again, talking about trying to get some diversity, doing something a little bit different, but not extremely different. A wrinkle, I guess you could say.
Brian Wilson's extra point is good, and the Mustangs are on the board, cutting the Panther lead to 21-7 with 3 minutes, 25 seconds remaining in the third quarter.
And so, Mark, I have to admit, this looks like the Wekiva team we saw the first 2 or 3 games when they were rolling to outscoring their opponents by like 30 points in a half. They looked determined, they looked like they had a sense of urgency, and they looked like they were on a mission. They looked like they understood the situation, that time was ticking away, and they had to at least get a touchdown here. They were given an opportunity to get back into the game, and they could not let that go by the boards.
Jalen Washington on the return. Peterson Gettium makes the stop for the Mustangs. The ball is spotted at the 35-yard line for a return of 13 yards for Washington. And the Panthers will take over from there with 1st and 10.
Where are they? 35? Yeah. And that's an important return, Mark. You're looking at 35-yard line as opposed to 22. Really a nice job there by Washington. Looked like he was going to get tackled right away and wound up getting the 13 yards. It's a pretty significant gain considering the coverage.
One on the stop.
Brandon Fields on the carry. Larry Preston on the stop. And boy, it seems like we're calling Larry Preston's name a lot. You see him a lot in the secondary. This time you saw him make a stop on a running play. A gain of 9 on the carry. And it brings up 2nd and 1 for the Panthers.
Yeah, as you just said, Mark, 9 yards. That's not the number you want to be hearing.
No, and that's not Preston's fault. That should have been stopped farther up by the inner part. Yeah, by the D line.
22 on the stop. That's going to be first down.
Brandon Fields on the carry. Tony Newsom makes the stop for the Mustangs. That puts the ball at the 46-yard line for a gain of 2 on the play, and it is just enough for a Panther first down.
And as far as strategy and philosophical concept or approach, when you're up by, even now, even though Wekiva's cut the lead to 2 touchdowns, Dr. Phillips is still in the position where they don't need to do anything fancy. 2nd and 1, basically, if you're Fields, you hit that line and you lean forward and you're getting that first down. And ultimately, then you get to chew up another 2.5 minutes or so minimum.
26.
Handoff is made to Wells.
Stop by 38.
And
Rodney Wells on the carry. The stop is made by the Mustangs.
What's his number?
That's what I saw.
What's his number? Wells' number?
26.
And by the way, Wells is the son of Rodney Wells, the head coach. He's actually a junior. We didn't really have a chance to talk about this, of course, because both teams run no huddle. But Wells has been the coach at Dr. Phillips for most of their run, which I said included 5 appearances in the state final and 8 state semifinal appearances.
Rodney Wells again on the carry, and again the stop is made by the Mustangs' Tony Newsom. That puts the ball just shy of the 50-yard line at the 49. That'll be a gain of 1 on the play, and it brings up 3rd and 7.
So again, DP, even with the lead being cut into, you don't want to do anything fancy. You don't want to take any risks, which are going to create a mistake and ultimately opens the door again for Wekiva. You'd rather lose some yardage here and force Wekiva to start a possession deep.
And here once again, Jaquez Jones proves to be lethal for the Panthers. The pass is complete to Jaquez Jones, and he takes off running for a 51-yard Panther touchdown.
Who caught that? 18 to 10. 51 yards. So, again, Mark, nothing new there. They've been playing, DP's been going to that same pass play. They've basically had 2 pass plays. Both of them, the receiver runs a hitch or a post route about 15 yards past the line of scrimmage and about halfway between the sideline and the hash mark. The only difference, as the PAT is good, is whether it's an over-the-top or a pass which goes to the numbers. And this time, Jones got the angle. Excellent pass by Givens, caught him in stride, and that was pretty much all she wrote. 45 yards later, it's 28-7 and a 21-point lead again.
Riley Stevens' extra point is good to make it a 28-7 game with 27.3 seconds remaining in the third quarter. His kickoff goes into the end zone for a touchback, and the Mustangs will start their next possession from their own 20-yard line.
What are Gibbons' numbers?
So Isaiah Givens has completed 6 of 11 so far for 207 yards. He's averaging 35 yards per completion, and that ball that he just threw was officially his longest of the night at 51.
Yeah, and he has 2 touchdowns. So again,
Sear gets out of the pocket, had a good look at Tamarian Foster.
how many plays does DP run?
Who broke that up?
I went broken up.
Okay.
He dropped it.
For DP,
16 to
36 for
23.
Wekiva.
So please excuse us here for the silence. We were adding up some stats for you here as we get to the end of the third quarter. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the efficiency of Givens under center.
Tamarian Foster has the completion. Griffey on the stop for the Panthers. And that will put the ball at the 27-yard line for a gain of 7 on the play. It'll bring up third and a long 3 when we come back from the break, and we have reached the end of the third quarter. The Mustangs trail the Panthers 7-28 with 12 minutes left in the ball game.
So while we got the break here, Mark, those statistics, as you mentioned, Givens has only thrown the ball 17 times. He's 6 of 11 for 207 yards. And what that means, and what we were looking up, is Dr. Phillips has run 42 plays, 31 have been rushes, 11 have been passes. So you're looking at only about 25% of the passes, or 25% of the plays being passes, yet they've gained 207 yards, which is about 2/3 of their total yards. So definitely going all the way back to the pregame show, or at the beginning of the football game, we talked about how Dr. Phillips is a keep it close to the vest kind of team as far as the approach of attacking the opponent. They like to run the ball. They like to run it between the tackles. And then maybe 6 or 7 times they'll take a shot down the field with the long pass. But when they do, they are extremely effective.
Pass is complete to Aquilas Sumter. Stephen Dix on the stop. And Brendan Sear is slow to get up. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to remind you, if you are depending on a ride to get home from tonight's game and you have not already done so, make sure you give them a call and let them know that we are in the fourth quarter now and they should be headed this way. Drop-off and pickup can be completed at the bus loop on the other side of campus for easier traffic access. We appreciate your help and remind you that the campus will close promptly 30 minutes after the conclusion of today's game.
And that's some kind of injury to either the left ankle or knee. I got to tell you, Mark, that does look very serious. Both head coaches and the head trainer of both staffs were out there.
Yeah, Brendan Sear is limping pretty seriously. Sear is shaken up on the play. He makes his way off with the assistance of our athletic training team. And so look for Larry Preston to be a more substantive presence in the last 11 minutes and 51 seconds of this contest. Of course, that has some consequences for Wekiva. First of all, Preston is a little bit more of a rushing quarterback than Sear is. And second of all, when you put Preston in the quarterback position, you take him away from the wide receiver position, which he also plays. And Wekiva right now could use some good passing plays, because they have 3 touchdowns to make up and less than 12 minutes to do it.
Wekiva needs any kind of play that gains yardage right now.
Larry Preston completes the ball to number 86, Harleante Reed, who is stopped by Nakeem Reynolds, but not before picking up a Mustang first down. Gain of 10 yards on the completion. That puts the ball at the 40-yard line.
So again, Mark, going back, if you are not a Wekiva Mustang fan for more than about a year, Larry Preston made his presence known in the same situation. Third game last year against Winter Park, although I believe it was a 17-point difference. He came in about halfway through the third quarter and led Wekiva to a victory, scoring on 3 consecutive drives.
The pass was intended for number 81, Fletcher Charles. It's broken up by number 19, Miles Wiley, and that'll bring up 3rd and 10 for the Mustangs.
And, you know, you have to wonder on a pass like that that was so wild, how much of that wildness had to do with the fact that Preston has not really been a quarterback all season.
Yeah, certainly not for those deep passes. Preston's going to run this time. He stopped well short of the first down.
15 took it away. 15 took it away.
And the ball is dropped on the tackle. Number 15, Alberto Guzman, makes the recovery for the Panthers, and they take over from the Mustang 45-yard line. Well, Neil, that was just what the doctor did not order.
Yeah. Although, I guess you can take some comfort in the fact that at least when you look at possession, nothing changed. Wekiva would have had to punt the ball anyway. Obviously, much better field position for Dr. Phillips. And as we mentioned, Dr. Phillips having a 3-touchdown lead from the beginning of this half has a number
Look at that
of
blown
options.
coverage of the defensive line. Nobody's home, and number 28, Amir Johnson, runs 45 yards on the first play of the drive for a Panther touchdown.
Well, to be honest, though, Mark, options have nothing to do. I just spent 15 seconds explaining about the options, how they get even better when you take over the ball on your opponent's 45-yard line. But when your offensive line can blow a hole that big right in the middle, you don't need to rely on options. Options have really no influence. It's just hand the ball off to your running back. Just make sure your running back gets the ball in his gut. It's 28.
Riley Stevens' extra point is good. The Panthers extend their lead to 35-7 with 10 minutes, 40 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter.
So again, while DP has come in here, played well, the exact opposite is true of Wekiva. I mean, I do think you have to give DP some credit. They certainly look like they are a team that's looking to make a statement, that's on a mission, understands, and wants to take some major steps towards the big picture of getting into the playoffs and getting a high seed. Wekiva has also contributed to that. They just do not look like a team that was ready to play. Again, I know I've said that a number of times. I talked about that throughout the first half. I mentioned it at our halftime before the second half began. But there's really no other way to really talk about this game. Just plain and simple, Wekiva looks like they're still suffering a hangover from giving up 31 consecutive points to Edgewater last week. Other than that touchdown they scored, which of course the opportunity arose because DP made the mistake of fumbling the ball on a punt attempt, Wekiva has shown no urgency, no determination, and really they just don't look like a team that's focused on carrying out a game plan.
Yeah, even just then, Jamon Coleman swatting at the ball. I hope he knew where he was on the field, because if he had been 2 yards closer than that, that would have been very, very bad. But instead it will be a touchback on the kick by Riley Stevens, and the Mustangs will take over at their own 20-yard line. Preston finds Fletcher Charles. The pass is complete to Fletcher Charles, and Dante Johnson makes the stop after a gain of 9 yards. 2nd and inches coming up for the Mustangs.
So, again, I know Coach Bedison at the end of last week's game, and I asked him directly, if you recall, about, for lack of a better way to put it, but getting punched in the face. And it just really looks like Wekiva, that's an incredible weakness that they're suffering from right now. DP came out and did the same thing that Edgewater did as far as, like I mentioned, they had a certain urgency, a certain feeling that they were on a mission and a certain statement to make, and just a certain sense of we need to win this game in order to take a big step towards making the playoffs.
Amari Thomas on the carry.
And when DP got physical in that sense in order to do what I just said they did, Wekiva did not respond.
Jedi Smith makes the stop for the Panthers, but not before Thomas picks up a Mustang. First down. Gain of 13 on the play for Thomas. That's one of the better rushing moves we've seen all night from Wekiva. That pass complete to Harleonte Reed. Stop is made by Cameron Metcalf. That puts the ball into Panther territory. Spotted at the 48-yard line, and it is just enough for a Mustang first down. Flag on the play. Prior to the snap, false start called against the Mustang offense. That's a 5-yard donation to the Panther cause. And a replay of first down.
You know, and the thing that we can also talk about this game, I believe there's only been one turnover from Wekiva. So it's not like Wekiva's giving Panthers opportunity through the most obvious and tangible mistakes, which is the turnover.
Pass intended for Fletcher Charles is dropped. Brings up 2nd and 15 for the Mustangs from their own 47-yard line.
So nonetheless, Mark, you know, they're losing this game. They're losing badly. They've been dominated throughout the whole game, and they haven't turned the ball over except for one time. So that really, I believe, feeds even more into the statement about getting punched in the mouth and not really answering,
Whoa.
not really showing some
Ball is
pride.
loose. Miles Wiley forces a fumble. Travick Ward is there to make the recovery. What a tackle.
Yeah, blind side there. And again, talking about just getting physically hammered out there, DP has really done a number on Wekiva as far as the physical play out here. The offensive line, you know, just blew by that offensive line, no resistance. And Larry Preston was a dead duck there. It doesn't matter who your quarterback is when a
Yeah, you can't blame Preston for that. When you get Miles Wiley punching through your offensive line with that much speed, Preston didn't have a sporting chance.
Yeah, well, it's not just the speed, although that is a part of it, but it's also the fact that it was blindside. Preston never...
No, he didn't see it coming.
Yeah, so again, you know, I really don't want to go down the road of talking about getting punched in the mouth or the chest, but when you're giving up plays like that, that is an example of the other team punching you in the mouth and not responding.
8 on the carry. I didn't see who got him.
Jaden Taylor picks up 2 yards for the Panthers. That brings up 2nd and 8 from the Mustang 47.
26. Stop by 6.
So,
Rodney Wells on the carry. Tackle made by Jamel Lynch. That pulls the ball up to the 45-yard line for a gain of 2 yards on the play.
So again, Rodney Wells is the son of Coach Wells. And of course, Coach Wells, he's a senior. Over the last 20 years, we mentioned DP's won a state championship into the final 5 times, state semifinals 8 times, and Wells has been the head coach for about 3/4 of that run.
Stop by 6.
Gain of 2 yards for Rodney Wells.
So again, if you're DP, you're not even no longer just trying to not open the door for Wekiva to get a second life through a bad mistake. At this point, with the 28-point lead and 7 minutes left, if you're DP, you just want to get out of here without any injuries.
So the Panthers will go for it on 4th down because, well, why not?
Seeing some hopscotch there by Givens.
Jaden Taylor on the carry. Luther Johnson makes the stop for the Mustangs. We'll wait for the spot. Ball is spotted at the 41-yard line, and that is a gain of 1 yard. They needed 3, and so the ball is turned over on downs to the Mustangs. Well, Neil, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for Wekiva here, but still 28 points in 7 minutes is a very tall order even for the best teams.
Yeah, and again, you're without your starting QB, and your starting QB is a more skilled passer.
Pass is complete to Harleonte Reed. The stop is made for the Panthers by Jedi Smith. A gain of 5 on the play, and that make it 4 yards. That puts the ball at the 45-yard line. Amari Thomas on the carry. And the stop is made by number 42.
So DP.
Andre Young.
DP, as we mentioned at the beginning of the game, started in a 4-3, almost a 4-4, and they've remained in that formation throughout the majority of the game. I say a 4-4 because you got one of your secondary players coming up to the linebacker level.
The pass is complete to number 81, Fletcher Charles. Stop is made by Tevin Griffey, and it is over midfield and enough for a Mustang first down. And we have now reached the midpoint of the 4th quarter, and so we'll pause here for an official timeout. And we'll also take this opportunity to remind you, if you are depending on a ride to get home from today's game and you have not already done so, make sure you give them a call and let them know that we are now into the last 6 minutes of play. And so they should be on their way to pick you up. We appreciate your cooperation, and we also remind you that the facility and the campus will be closed promptly 30 minutes after the conclusion of tonight's game. Thank you for helping our administrators to get home to their families. Neil, we've talked a lot about, we talked earlier in the game about Chad Davis being absent last week and also being absent this week, and the effect that that's had on the Mustangs' rushing game. But I would argue that based on the holes we've found in the defensive line and the offensive line, frankly, that's really not the first factor. Oh, and there's a dropped snap. That's really not the first or most important factor in the outcome of today's game.
No,
Preston, the ball is fumbled, and it is recovered by number 42, Andre Young, and the Panthers will take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Davis being out, again, it just goes back to the fact, and I know I keep beating this dead horse, but you can talk about strategy and tactics and matchups all you want, but Dr. Phillips, in any sport, really anything in life, if you really have a desire to succeed, you have to come out with a mission in your mind. You have to have an urgency, some determination to complete that urgency. And Dr. Phillips has had that. They've also, I guess you could also relate that to the fact that Dr. Phillips is looking to gain significant RPA points and position themselves to not only get into the playoffs but to get a very high seed. And Wekiva's been the completely opposite. They just, again, look like they're still dealing with the hangover of losing the big game against Edgewater, and in particular giving up 31 consecutive points, everything just falling apart for them.
Jaden Taylor on the carry. The stop is made by R.J. Bush for a loss of 1, and it brings up 2nd and 11. And for those of you who are counting, and unfortunately we are, There have been no interceptions thrown by either team tonight, but the Panthers have had 2 fumbles, but they managed to recover both of them. Wekiva has dropped the ball 4 times and turned it over on 3 of them.
Stop by 28.
Number 34, Xavier Jones on the carry. The stop is made for the Mustangs by Assad Wasim.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out, though, Mark, 2 of those 3 fumbles committed by Wekiva have been in the fourth quarter. So through the first 3 quarters, when this 35-7 lead was built, Dr. Phillips only had the advantage or the benefit of getting that lead with 1 turnover.
Yeah, and we'll talk about this more in the postgame, but I think really if you had to hang your hat on one major factor that has been a contributor to tonight's game, other than the general lack of energy, you would have to pin it on the linesman. Xavier Jones on the carry. Ball spotted at the 38-yard line for a gain of 15. We've seen so many times tonight the Panthers managed to punch through the Mustang defense and have nobody in front of them. And likewise, when the Mustangs have been on offense, we've seen a couple of situations where Sear and Preston have been hurried, and in the most severe case, sacked with a fumble.
Yeah, just on when Wekiva's had the football, it's been monsoon season. Just the pocket never really exists. It's just both sides of the line just collapse and encircle the quarterback.
Givens hands the ball off to Xavier Jones. James Lentz makes the stop. No gain on the play.
I'd also like to point out, too, in regards to your statement about blowing big holes when DP's been on offense, that last touchdown, as soon as the ball was snapped, there was about a 7-foot hole right in the middle. And as I mentioned at the time, and I will again, you don't have to do anything fancy. You don't have to really have any strategy. Just make sure you get the ball in the running back's gut there. The hole was so big, all he had to do once he got the ball was just run forward.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement from the concession stand. They have a surplus available tonight, and so everything is on sale for $1 each. So if you'd like to get yourself a great value on a snack on your way out tonight, now is the time to stop by. Everything must go. It's just not as good tomorrow morning. We appreciate your support of our band programs. Ball is loose. You see who got it?
54 recovery of DP.
DP doesn't have a 54.
DP does. DP recovered.
I know, but they don't have a 54.
I thought they did.
Yeah.
They have a 74. Yeah, they have a 54 out there.
Well,
He's a center, actually.
oh, there he is. Never mind.
No, the left tackle.
Never mind, I found it.
Tripped up by 7. 8 on the carry.
Jaden Taylor on the carry. Johnny Chaney makes the stop. That will put the ball just shy of the 40-yard line at the 38 for no gain on the play, and it turns the ball over on downs to the Mustangs.
So we'll have 1 minute and 28 seconds left, Mark. And then, again, as much as it pains me to say this, I'm not sure there's really any other way to put it. Mercifully, this contest will be in the history books. Incomplete.
How long has 8 been quarterbacking? I didn't notice when that changed. 8 was taking snaps for DP.
I think most of this quarter. Stop by 52.
Amari Thomas on the carry, stopped by the Panthers, number 52. Gain of 1 on the play, 3rd and 9.
So now we're under a minute here, Mark, and again, this game is mercifully coming to an end.
Amari Thomas on the carry. Tackled by Jedi Smith. Ball spotted at the 48-yard line for a gain of 9 yards. Would have perhaps been enough for a Mustang first down, but that will be the last play of the game as time expires. And 35-7, the Panthers will come up with the victory tonight. And that takes us to the end of the ball game. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for joining us tonight here at Baptist Orthodontic Stadium, or for joining us on the NFHS Network or YouTube Live to support your Mustang and Panther athletes. Mustang fans, we hope to see you next week for Powder Puff Homecoming Thursday night. We also hope to see you next Friday night at 6 o'clock for the Homecoming Parade, which will begin down at the bus loop and head toward Baptist Orthodontic Stadium, where we will then have the presentation of the homecoming court, followed by our homecoming game against Forest from Ocala. We'll have the crowning of the king and queen at halftime, and then we will have the presentation of the band's performances at the conclusion of the game. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Wekiva Sports, and bookmark WekivaMustangs.com for all of your scores, schedules, and more. Please drive carefully and arrive home safely, and have a great night.
I did.
And so we'll bring things back inside the press box here, Neil, as we had not the game that we wanted to see from Wekiva tonight. 35-7, and well, we've been talking about it all game. We had a lot of lackluster moments from the Mustangs. Certainly have to give credit to Dr. Phillips. They played well tonight. They executed well. They made relatively few mistakes, and just that consistent, solid performance, particularly at the offensive and defensive lines, really made the difference for Wekiva.
Yeah, Mark, I think what you said, but to be even more specific, I've said it all night. It's a dead horse, but I'm going to say it one last time here, because really, you don't even need to talk about strategy or tactics. But Dr. Phillips came into this game. They looked like a team that was on a mission. They looked like a team that understood they had to play with urgency. They had to make a statement, and they had to take some big steps with the victory tonight towards the bigger picture of not only getting into the playoffs, but being able to get a high seed, and also sending out that message to the rest of the teams they might face in Class 8A about we are a legitimate state championship contender. As we mentioned at the beginning of the game, Dr. Phillips was 4-2. They had beaten 4 teams. 3 of the 4 teams, and Boone, Timber Creek, and West Orange, are at least every year considered state championship tournament qualifiers. But I don't think you would really ever talk about them from year to year in the sense of being a state championship contender. The 2 teams that they had played who do fall under that conversation of being a state championship contender, at least making a long run, winning a couple of games, were Apopka and Seminole, and they had lost to both of them. It looked like Dr. Phillips was well aware of that fact, that's the difference in their 4 victories and their losses. Wekiva was in a similar situation coming off the loss to Edgewater, of course, because the playoffs, if you don't win your district, then you have to get in as a wild card, and the best you can do is a 5th seed. That just didn't seem to be a motivating factor for them. They still seem, again, I know I've said it, but the other part of what I've said over and over again is that it just looked like Wekiva still had the hangover, not only from losing the game last week to Edgewater, losing a 1 versus 4 matchup, the big game everybody had been talking about, but Specifically, they gave up 31 consecutive points. And again, they look like they just had a hangover from that.
Yeah, so a couple of tough weeks in a row for Wekiva. They will have to snap out of it to take on Ocala's Forest High School next week. That is a team that is now in our district that has never been before, as Wekiva was knocked down to 7A this year due to enrollment. And so Forest, Southlake, and Edgewater are now our district opponents, as opposed to Apopka, Evans, and West Orange, which had been our district opponents for the last several years. Tonight's contest, the stats make it very clear. DP with 18 first downs to Wekiva's 11, 476 yards to Wekiva's 236. Brendan Sear had not a half bad night, though, 19 of 31 overall passing. Brendan Sear, before he was taken out of the game, was 14 of 22 for 149 yards. Larry Preston came in at relief and was 5 of 9 for 38 yards. And then the rushing game, again, Chad Davis's absence, while I don't think it would have change the outcome of tonight's game. Certainly it does change the rushing stats, because Amari Thomas, who does a great job, cannot carry the whole rushing game by himself, especially because Sear is not really a rushing quarterback. And so rushing yards, 269 for Dr. Phillips and just 49 for Wekiva.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to look at one specific stat in conjunction to the final score of 35-7, I think rushing is the one that really sticks out. Wekiva, of course, they make that's their meal ticket, so to speak, their calling card, and they couldn't get anything going on rushing. Again, going back to what I was saying about just looking like a team that just was not ready to play and had a hangover and didn't really focus, have that in the back of their mind that we need to play with urgency and determination to take some big steps towards securing a playoff berth. They came out, they drove the ball about 60 yards, got the attempt from I believe it was 35 yards, the field goal attempt, which went wide left, and then the body language, that's where everything went off the track. So I really think that was the play of the game, even though it was only about 4 or 5 minutes in. They just never looked like the same team. And again, I mentioned this throughout the fourth quarter. For lack of a better way of putting it, I don't really like using the phrase because it's used a lot, but I think of the phrase got punched in the mouth. And Wekiva, from that point on, as you mentioned, was physically dominated, and that always starts at the line. The last touchdown that Dr. Phillips scored, as we mentioned, that was about a 7-foot hole right in the middle. There was no strategy, no tactics involved. All that Givens had to do was make sure he got the ball into Fields' gut, don't fumble the ball, and Fields just run straight ahead. It was so open. You and I, it's been 35 years since I put on the football uniform, and it's been almost as long for you. Even just recreationally, we could have ran through that line and scored a 45-yard touchdown.
You could drive a bus through that. Well, in any case, we'll leave it at that for tonight. The Mustangs will look to bounce back next week. It is homecoming week. We've mentioned it a couple of times before, but again, we will have the homecoming parade beginning at 6 o'clock, and that will start down at the bus loop here at Wekiva. That will precede the presentation of the homecoming court, which we will have before the game, and then we'll have the first half against Forest. Homecoming king and queen will be crowned at halftime. The band performances that you would normally see at halftime, those will be preempted and moved to after the game. And then, of course, we'll have the homecoming dance on Saturday evening here in the gym. We'll also have the Powder Puff homecoming game on Thursday. I do not have confirmation yet on whether we're going to be able to carry that on webcasting. We will certainly be carrying the actual game on Friday night on YouTube Live and the NFHS Network. We will see if we can get the necessary personnel and resources to do the Powder Puff game as well. And we hope to see you for all of those events. Make sure that you are following us on Twitter and Facebook at Wekiva Sports. Make sure you are also subscribed to our YouTube channel so that you will know whenever we have new videos posted and whenever we go live. My thanks to Neil Fisher from the Apopka Chief joining me tonight and every week to cover your Mustang athletic programs. My name is Mark Barchi, the voice of the Mustangs, wishing you a good night and a great weekend.